Okay, well, I guess if you want to go ahead and kick it off, Adam, that'd be great.
Okay, certainly. So, what I was just going to cover was, kind of talk about non-game related uses for game tech, but maybe in the context of my career, since that's really what I had the most experience with, and I can speak, closest to. But first off, if any of the students want to get in contact with me, I'm more than happy to field questions and take a quick call or provide some guidance here and there. That's definitely have an open door. So I'm on TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, for communications related to Reliance Geo, which is my employer. This is my email. And then for non-Reliance Geo related questions, this is my personal email. All right. So a little bit about me. I guess I kind of got my start in gaming, as most of us did as a child, playing games with our family. And one of the games that we played a lot was Dungeons and Dragons. And I learned so much about game design, players, designers, character development, story, and plot, and so much interesting stuff, at a very, very early age. And I think most of my early work with engaging with computers was actually trying to create tools for Dungeons and Dragons, like game master screens and various random character generators and the like. But I transitioned that into later into a career in art, and I graduated from Florida State University with a degree in graphic design and Japanese, and that kind of launched me into my career. So again, my name is Adam Bruce. I'm presently the Serving Vice President of Next Gen Media and Experiences for Reliance Geo. Um, Prior to this role at Reliance Geo, I spent a lot of time in virtual reality as a producer. I've got titles like the Blue Deep Rescue under my belt. I also have spent a fair amount of time as a researcher in shared space virtual reality and have developed projects for NASA, JPL, Department of Energy, and USOCOM. Prior to my virtual reality work, I also did a lot of startups that used a lot of game design tech, beginning with Vidiac in 2004, which was the first social video sharing website on the internet, pre-YouTube. We scaled that pretty big, turned that into Streetfire, which is the largest automotive channel on the internet for some time, transitioned that into Drive as YouTube came out and streaming really became pervasive on that platform. But around 2012 was when I went back into VR. And then prior to all of this, I worked at AT&T Solutions as a executive and Bell Labs network operations and engineering. And really, it was my game design background that got me that first job at network operations and engineering at AT&T, as they were really impressed with a product I was working with at the time called Macromedia Flash, which was a early pre-runner to AutoWare and Unity and Unreal and all these other game development environments we use today. So with that said, let me talk a little bit about my role at Reliance Geo and how I'm using virtual reality and game tech today. Reliance Geo is a large company in the Indian subcontinent. We provide power and gas to India, as well as telecommunications and retail. My specific area of responsibility is developing virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality experiences for the Indian market. And in that regard, I serve more as an executive producer than a line producer, where I actually work with studios to help get their titles into the Indian market. So now I'm going to kind of go below the line here, step away from my executive work I'm doing at Geo, go back to my line production work I was doing prior to Geo, and talk specifically about a game I developed and how that transitioned into a non-game related government grant. So I was the producer for the Blue Deep Rescue. This was a Dreamscape production in partnership with Weaver. AMC Theaters and Steven Spielberg had invested significant capital into Dreamscape, and Dreamscape was looking to bring virtual reality theaters to malls nationwide. This is pre-pandemic, by the way. Their plan has changed since the pandemic. But they needed a front door experience to introduce people to their VR theater. And so we produced a experience where 6 people could save a whale together in virtual reality. And what was really compelling about this was that you and your 5 friends would go to a Dreamscape theater, you suit up, you'd walk into this holodeck together, and be transported into this undersea world. And you could still see your friends. So you could like high five them, you could walk around them, and you could explore together. You could tap your buddy on the shoulder and point to like a fun little sea anemone you see. And it actually created all kinds of amazing modalities. But despite critical acclaim and everything else, the pandemic really set back the company, and they've not really expanded. The Blue is still showing at Dubai and Los Angeles and a couple other places. But one of the biggest things that held back this product was actually the implementation of the product. And this is where game design engineering, really comes into play when you're building experience. Now, in order to synchronize the players such that one person was able to high five another in virtual reality, all the players in the experience, all 6 of them, have to have a shared and common origin. And the way we did that at Dreamscape was the technology called Vicon. And Vicon, basically everyone wears little tracking balls. There's cameras outside of the stage, all wrapped around that view in, look at what the players are doing, and they synchronize them in space. And through doing that, they're able to create this cohesive virtual experience. Now, the downside of this is that it is very, very expensive. The stage itself is millions of dollars. It requires a couple of operators in order to keep this experience going. Because of the huge cost, I mean, you have to have a giant warehouse-sized room or a movie theater. Rent can be exceptionally expensive. You're talking about millions of dollars in cost that you have to recover before you even start talking about what the business model is for this type of a product. So, it's been, these types of things have expanded, but this again is 2018 technology. There's Steven Spielberg actually trying out our Dreamscape experience. But one thing I realized after I completed production of the Blue was that even though this technology is exceptionally compelling, it will never be practical or useful so long as you have to deploy a multi-million-dollar stage in order to make shared space virtual reality a reality. So in 2018, I joined the research world at the IHMC in Pensacola, Florida. And IHMC is the Institute for Human Machine Cognition. They specialize in robotics and human metabolism. And they needed a virtual reality capacity because a lot of government grants were coming through in need of VR work. And they asked me what I wanted to research. And I said to them, look, I really want to figure out how to take this game tech that we'd figured out for Dreamscape and make it practical, make it useful. But it costs too much money to have a multi-million-dollar stage. And that's really blocking our ability to do anything meaningful with this new this new VR modality of being able to share a virtual experience together in multiplayer, in shared space, walking around, in the same environment. So through the support of IHMC, I was able to solve the problem. I was able to figure out how to reconcile the origin of all the players without using an outside-in technology. I was able to use the inside-out tracking technology of the Oculus Quest headsets to completely obviate all the Vicon hardware. And by coming at it with a pure software solution, I was able to take a multi-million-dollar stage, get rid of it, and just focus on the $1,200 and the cost for 6 VR headsets to do a stage. More importantly, the stage became mobile. By doing it in software and thinking of the game technology as how do we make this more practical and useful, and less about the game we're building and more about how we could generalize this technology to other ideas, it became very clear that mobility became one of the benefits of having a lightweight solution. This experience right here is at Oculus Connect in 2019. I had reached out to John Carmack and I had told him about the technology that we were developing. He said, I would love to see it. Come meet me in the hallways. And if you've ever been to an Oculus Connect and you've seen John Carmack, it's really, really hard to meet him in the hallways because there's a cloud of people who all want to talk to John. And I was very, very lucky that I had a team of people that were able to cordon off a space, get a little bit of his time, invite him in, and show him this experience. And he was exceptionally enthusiastic about it. He thought this was a great, great application for virtual reality and really encouraged us to keep going. So we did. And where's the next slide? Oh, sorry, I have a video. This is the actual experience we showed Carmack. So as you can see, we're outside here and, in a completely open environment, and we're able to get 4 people here together quickly, throw them into a virtual experience together. I mean, the entertainment applications for this are pretty obvious. I mean, you could do everything from like play paintball together in VR to go on Dungeons and Dragons adventures together in VR. All right. So the tech was really interesting, but how do we make it useful? Why would someone need this game tech in their project? All right. Let me step back here and talk about the type of government grant works that a research institute like the IHMC is constantly receiving, and the way VR technology and game tech even help them in order to do this very important research. So the Department of Energy reached out to IHMC through Sandia Research Lab and said that they had a problem of doing nuclear cleanup sites where workers would spend many, many, many hours in full PPE, wearing, full, gas tanks on their back and everything else, doing manual labor. And the workforce that they had was aging out, and they were looking at assistive technologies that could help these workers do their job easier and safer. One of the things IHMC researchers realized would be useful would be the development of an exoskeleton that could offset the weight of the tank from the user, so that when they're just standing there, the tank isn't actually sitting on their shoulders, it's actually sitting on the exoskeleton. But in order to build an exoskeleton, there's a lot of work that has to go into this. So the IHMC, really focused on a highly flexible exoskeleton and, how they could build it. And what we did is we then created what you call a digital twin. And a digital twin is when you take an object in the real world and virtualize it into a VR world, so that you can then simulate various forces and interactions on it and see how it will operate. So by creating a digital twin of this hardware that we developed, we are able to take this product into a virtual environment and see how it would perform in the set and setting that the product was designed to do. So just a quick video of that. So apologies, this video was never meant to be seen by anyone other than internal development, but it just kind of shows you that we were using VR. We had using our shared space. Sorry. We're actually using our shared space technology here to actually co-locate people into the environment and actually work through our digital twins, show the digital twins. And yeah, this is probably not the best video, because I would shoot these videos all the time just to like track our progress, never really for external publishing. But the point is that, these are players in the environment interacting, and you could actually put them into the work site, go through the steps of whatever work it is you're doing with the product, and see, like, is this a good product or not? The game design tech to support this has to be transparent to the actual use case that people are working on. Here, the use case is, what kind of work is being done? How is the exoskeleton going to interfere or get in the way of that kind of work, or will it get in the way, or will it assist? And so we have people actually play acting the work, and we actually have our digital twins here following us along. Now, in the course of doing this, building this experience, we found all kinds of interesting problems we had to solve. One of the first problems we solved is that if you actually look at the exoskeleton, it's not tracking, and the physics are broken, and everything is oscillating, and it's just crazy, crazy, crazy time here. Lots of errors and problems. It's one thing to say in concept, hey, yeah, we should just build digital twin of that and just throw it up. And it's another thing to actually implement it. And when you start to implement it, you start to run into interesting issues. And I think one of the issues we found is that the physics loop in Unity is really designed for games and not necessarily science. And so we had to play around a lot with the fidelity of that in order to get like real useful data and actually get that to track. But it doesn't take much adaptation to really, see how, solving problems for one project versus another. There's so much in common with it. Like as a game design engineer, you almost don't really care if you're building an exoskeleton or building something for Skyrim. You receive a problem, you have to implement it inside of the limitations of the project. And for us, we weren't really focusing on like, matching the avatar or like the shadows or, the fidelity. We were really just interested more in the hits of the colliders and how the exoskeleton was functioning. So we were able to get our design engineers to focus on solving those specific problems. So you get good data for it. Now on, I think I had one more video to show. Yeah, I just wanted to show this one little area. So this was our EXO showcase gallery where we were showing the progress of our design. And we would actually meet the client in this environment. We would actually invite our Sandia partners to come into virtual reality with us. We'd walk over to the exoskeletons with them and then point out the improvements we were making to the product to receive their feedback. So again, this is where we had to actually use multiplayer technology. We were using a Photon Bolt because it had a better authoritative packet estimation system. We were using, we had a lot of work we had to do on the art side in order to get this work. We were using like bakery in the Unity side in order to get the light bakes good. We had a really interesting time learning about how our static meshes and were getting great bakes, but we were having some problems with the avatars, so they weren't set up right. Another thing we actually found is that setting up for virtual reality is very, very different from setting up for a game, because in a game on a screen, that little character is only a couple inches tall, but in virtual reality, they're 6 feet tall. So any error that maybe you miss in a small context becomes very, very amplified. So something else, that was interesting for us is we spent so much more time in QA than we did in development for this project. And I think this is probably, I don't know if this is native just, specifically for this or what, but we definitely had to, when we were in the VR context and we were trying to focus on the utility rather than the fun, it really provided good context for how we needed to drive the product development and what labor was important, when labor was not important. So, all right. So that was kind of a high level of that project. I've engaged with many other, projects that were using game technology. I think, a good example of that is in Austin, there's a company called Interplay, which is using VR to actually do HVAC certification training. They found that by doing traditional techniques of web CBT style education, where you're just like clicking next on a web page and looking at videos, which was their traditional technique, that by actually taking the user into the set and setting of the work and have them physically work on the HVAC equipment, they found that they were able to reduce the learning by over 50%. Like it was a 12-month course became a 6-month course. And they also found that the students' grades improved by a full letter grade. So this is where they actually used game technology to help immerse the user, to help get them better understanding of the project, of what they need to take away from the lesson. And they learned it better by doing it spatially. They learned it better by physically working through the problem with their hands and their, with their arms and physically reaching out and grabbing the device they need to connect and then connecting it to the right spot. It helped reinforce that spatial memory. So that's just an example of where like the education sector is starting to embrace some of these game technologies. But what they're finding is the costs are still very high, and the costs come down to things like animation. I showed you the video of the squatting exoskeleton problem we had. That was both a physics problem and also was an animation problem. We're looking at animation as also as a tool of like, can we use like motion matching and some of these new AI motion matching systems to drive a character controller, and that will actually do like natural transitions from pose to pose, and could that actually drive a robotic controller? These are the interesting questions that we could pull from. But it's not just robotics. It's not just these kind of makerly style sectors that are starting to embrace game tech. I think actually most of the industries that had previously had moved from offline learning to like online technologies are now starting to look at real-time technologies as an option as well. I just recently came back from the Game Developer Conference in San Francisco, and at GDC this year, there were tons of people there showcasing how Unreal Engine and Unity are being used in the automotive sector to help prototype parts and design. They're showing how companies like Varo are now building VR headsets specifically for high-end industrial use cases. And in the education sector is really getting smart about games too. How can we make learning fun? How can we, really get students to, use real-time technologies to have nice takeaways, make learning fun, but also more impactful. Um, and for me specifically, my area has really stayed in this area of virtual reality collaboration, or VR for teaming. And I even view a classroom as a teaming environment. One of the projects that never got into production, we only took it through the design phase, was another IHMC project that got side railed by the pandemic, unfortunately. But we were working on building a virtual classroom with this shared space technology for students in Escambia County, Florida, so that teachers could take classrooms on virtual field trips to historical events. They could literally take a classroom of kids to Pompeii, show them a volcano erupting, step through the geology of it, step through some of the interesting historical notes about the eruption in Pompeii, but then physically be able to see how the kids are engaging with the virtual environment that they're walking around, and then direct them and walk up, tap little Timmy on the shoulder and say, hey, slow down. And did you see this little thing over here? So game tech is only becoming more relevant to business and industry today as real-time technologies are becoming practical to implement. For example, that multi-million-dollar stage I showed you that turned into $1,000 software solution. That's just one example of how, by really thinking through game tech and economizing it, you could actually create real value for industry. And I encourage all of you to use whatever passion you use to get into game design and game engineering, and really think through, like, what do you enjoy doing, but also ask what pain can you endure that you don't mind, and other people maybe do mind, right? Like for me, I don't mind sitting down on a computer and pounding out 1,000 lines of code. That's something I enjoy doing, I think. And I'll sit down with my AI coding assistant, and then two of us will have a great time together building out exceptional experiences. Not everyone loves doing that, but that's what I enjoy doing. And so I have been able to craft my career around finding opportunities where I could take what is painful for others, but not quite as painful for me, and actually open up opportunities there. So with that said, I talked through a few things, and I would love to open up the floor for any questions that you may have, or explore more. Let me know. So with that said, any questions?
So, okay, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so as far as, students that are entering, just getting into the workforce with game development skills, so they've been in our game studies, animation studies, what are some things that you think would be helpful for them to know in first just obtaining a junior role somewhere using those skills, whether it's in entertainment, but also in some of the different areas you're talking about in different industries? And then what would be important for them to know to be successful once they get into that role?
Well, maybe we should think about what is the definition of a junior role. And the axiom I kind of go with for defining a role as either normal, junior, or senior is that a junior developer implements solutions, right? Especially junior engineers. A junior engineer implements solutions. You receive a solution to implement, and you go and you put it out. A standard engineer finds solutions to problems, right? You're the one actually solving the problem and coming up with the solution. However, once you know what the solution is it actually the highest best use of your time? Because maybe you're a really expensive employee to be the one that implements the solution. And so this is why the regular engineers, you tap the junior engineers to actually do the work, because they're coming in, they're learning the ropes, they're learning why that solution was needed for that problem. And as they're doing that, as they're implementing these solutions, they're learning. So this is a learning opportunity. This is a development opportunity. This is a point where you learn those skills, right? Become a standard engineer and start solving problems. But what's a senior engineer? A senior engineer is someone who figures out what problems need to be solved. Because the thing is that not every problem should be solved. if you start solving every single problem on your production, your scope goes out of control and your budget goes away, the production goes bankrupt, and no one has a job, right? It's all about, you got to protect that little bucket of money that you're using to develop whatever product it is you're doing. And your role in the team is to help economize that bucket of money to then maximize the output at the end, right? So whatever talents you're really great at, you can really bring to bear. That's what the team is asking you to do. Whatever your stretches are, whatever you're bad at, that the team needs to know what you're bad at so that they can cover for you, right? And this is where communication is exceptionally important on production teams, because I want to know what I can count on you for and what you need to count on me for, okay? And that's how these teams work together. Now, when you're entering into these junior roles, it's exceptionally important to have both internal and external mentorship. Now, an external mentor will help you determine your own personal career objectives, okay? Do not count on a company to tend to your career. Count on external mentors to help you with your career. A company is really primarily focused on its own bottom line, and your value to that company is only in as much as you contribute to that bottom line, right? So when you know what a company is not your family. It's just a vehicle by which we get impact into the market and we all work together. It's easier for you to then coordinate with these teams and understand what your expectations are. Now, an internal mentor is one there to help you analyze your performance objectively, tell you what you don't want to hear so that you could fix it, right? Your internal mentor is also going to be there to show you missed opportunities or things that you could do that could amplify your impact, right? And as you're working with your internal mentor, this internal mentor, they could be someone who maybe they're like a senior engineer, maybe they're someone in another department who understands the politics of your particular organization. But they're really there to help you manage your expectations as well as help you manage your contributions to the team and then make sure that everything's flowing harmoniously. I think the final questions you asked, Jennifer, was something along the lines of, what things to get into this type of, so sadly, most things work on a network basis and referral basis in industry. And so the number one thing I tell everybody, especially juniors who are just learning, is figure out how to do projects with other people, how to engage with other people outside of a work context. Like hackathons are amazing, conferences are great, job fairs are cool, meetups are awesome. But the best thing is, like, if you're an artist, do art with other people, not for yourself, but with other people. Have other people tell you art they want to make, and just get into this flow of delivering, listening, hearing feedback, editing, pushing forward. And the universe will find you ready. You're working for this. When the opportunity comes, you're prepared, right? And more importantly, you don't know if that person you just did a game jam with or a hackathon with didn't get hired by EA or Activision, and suddenly they need someone with your skills. And because you are a known quantity and you've already delivered for that person in the past in a outside school project or a hackathon or what have you, they know, oh, if I pull this person into the team and invite them to be a team member with me, they're not going to embarrass me to my boss, right? Because ultimately, when you're hiring someone into your team, that's one of the first things that occurs. People are thinking in the back of their minds, like, if I bring this person into my team, are they going to be thanking me for this, or are they going to be hating me for this, right? So, you definitely want to build a network. You definitely want to test that network, but make sure that network is one based on you providing value and making sure your value is understood. With that said, I would say that if your goal is getting titles under your belt, the entertainment industry is definitely the way to go. But if it's really money, if you're really money focused and you're like, how do I make a living with art? You'll find that the entertainment industry is maybe like has one of the lowest payouts and is a bit of a grinder. This is a bit of a passion. There's so many people trying to get in that they could drive down those salaries and they could drive up those expectations. And this is where crunch time and everything else comes in. So I'm just, I'll warn you now that, be careful what you ask for. You may get it, right? And, But there's a counter to corporate life too. If you get a corporate development job, the pressure's not there, fame is not there, no one's going to play your title. Some vice president in India may get very excited about what you built. They're in your network now, right? So congratulations, you're building your network, right? But more importantly, if you find yourself in a creative position at a corporate in a corporate company, you still have incredible opportunities to develop your skills. This is a great opportunity to develop ideas for pitching proposals, asking for budgets, showing your executive teams your value, and saying, hey, look, if you give me $1 million so that our team can come together and we get the 15 of us to go build this tool for our company, the company bottom line increases by $2 million, right? They'll approve that project. Okay. So you get into this flow when you're, whatever situation you find yourself in, figure out how you can learn from it, figure out how you can grow from it. All right. I talked enough. More questions.
Okay. So Lauren, it's kind of a similar question, but she said she's interested in being an environmental artist and lighting artist for games or animated films. She hears it's really hard to get into those specific jobs without connections, which is kind of along with what you're saying, or a really professional portfolio. So I guess, along those lines of the networking and making those connections, but also how important is a portfolio and having your work on the portfolio.
When I'm reviewing applications, I look at the portfolio reel to determine whether I'm going to look at the resume, right? So I look at your work before I look at you. So it's really about like, what are you presenting to the world, and does it actually lead into the work you want to do? So if you want to be an environmental artist, show environmental art and call out your contribution on it. In terms of how do you build a network as an environmental artist, I got a friend of mine who's like a hard surface modeler, and she's perhaps in a slightly different situation. So this wouldn't work for her, but for you, it would actually, as an environmental artist. I would actually reach out to architects, architectural firms. I would, if you have engineering friends who are architectural friends who are building in kind of environments, build that resume. Volunteer yourself for any kind of hackathon, game jam projects that will improve your portfolio. That's on the portfolio side. On the network side, there's this new area called digital twins that is very, very hot in enterprise. And some digital twins environments are very, very boring for environmental artists. I'm sorry, Lauren, it's just the case. But the money is good. Taking like Amazon, virtualizing a warehouse, and then figuring out like where their little forklifts need to run around and what packages are where and everything, like honestly, that's where the money is. And that's a $1 billion problem that's being solved right now. And when they're building these environments, what they don't know, what the executives don't know, are things like, how do I economize my LODs? How do I, what's my try budget for this? What is, they're not really thinking in terms of performance. They're not really thinking in terms of usability. And these are some areas, Lauren, where maybe you should, either have an answer for or understand or whatever. But if you can provide those values of inside the environment, not just the layout, not just the set dressing, but what is our strategy for economizing the space? How do you work with, and when you talk in your interview, especially, tell me as a producer or director how you work with the game designer to lay out a level, right? And that if we're working in Amazon, we're figuring out forklift problems, and how you lay out a level, probably starts with some kind of use case around how a package is delivered, right? And then you can say, hey, it goes into this sector over here, and blah blah blah, and the user is going to have this type of stuff. That's more of a game designer concern, but here's how I'm going to help that game designer with these props in the environment. I'm going to have some highly tessellated things like in the zone 1 of my user Zone 1 for in VR speak, Zone 1 is anything the user could touch with their hands by extending. Zone 0 is anything that's like on their face or in their HUD. Zone 2 is near, and then Zone 3 is like can be like carded or billboarded, right? So like think of like, what's my Zone 1 going to look like? What does the play area look like, and how do I economize that? So when I'm interviewing an environmental artist, how good it looks is just one checkbox, right? I mean, I've seen some amazing artists who've made some beautiful worlds that I simply can't use because it's just too heavyweight. The environment won't even run on a PC, much less a mobile phone, right? But if you tell me as the environmental artist, yeah, I understood that the player was going to be in this particular zone, so we have some high value assets here. The player takes this object here, so I had to open up the door by this amount. I had to lift the tables by that, so at the proper height. These are the kinds of things I want to hear as a director, that you understand my problems and that I could count on you to give skill where I have weakness. And my area of weakness is it's gonna be the layout and all the other things that environmental artist has to solve. So, all right, next question.
Okay, any of our students have other questions? You can put them in the chat box or you can unmute. So yeah, I like what you're talking about as far as game development.
You're welcome.
If you're going to go into entertainment, that's just one market versus there are so many other markets. So how can our students, how can they imagine those things? I know, like you mentioned, car manufacturers like Tesla and McLaren are using VR for a lot of their, auto development and simulations, and medical simulations for, healthcare types of scenarios and education, all these things. So how can they identify those things that are maybe outside of the traditional entertainment game studios and things like that? Do you have any ideas of those ways that they can kind of think about those things that they may not even know existed or that are out there?
Well, for it's kind of funny. Like as an artist, I have a hard time thinking of how anyone would have sought out some of the industrial jobs that I had. It's an interesting thing to think about. But okay, so something that's different between the entertainment sector and most of the business sectors is actually how the teams are organized, right? In entertainment, you have executive producers who work with the director to tell a producer to line up the team to go do work and build a thing, and then goodbye. And then they'll shut down the whole production. They go off to the next movie, right? The studio is where these people actually have a bench. If they're not on that project, they get to go on the next project. Maybe they get a little bit of free time. If they sit on the bench too long, they lose their job, right? It's really kind of like entertainment is sort of like building houses. You almost like create a company to build a house, get rid of that company, get rid of all the liability, go to the next house, right? Companies don't have this more project-minded focus towards their overall operation. They're kind of thinking more real time, like this month I have a number to meet, and how my product's performing against that number, right? They're more like their idea of production is actually different from a Hollywood production. A Hollywood production is we're going to produce the thing, and then once we're going to ship it. In industry, production means the YouTube website is in production and live, and people are actually able to stream videos on it right now. And we have a patch we're going to roll out because we're going to change our interface on YouTube just a little bit. We're going to change the way the players look or what have you. So because of that, companies don't typically have executive producers working with directors to have producers then run. Instead, the way they typically work is they'll have like a product manager who owns a product, and they'll work with like a engineering manager who manages the engineers, and they'll may have like a project manager who's going to be actually managing the Jira, the backlog, and the task lists, et cetera, right? So structurally, the titles are different and the ownership is going to be different. I would say that product managers are probably an artist's best friend in terms of scouting roles, because if you have friends who are product managers and they have needs, they know what their product needs are. They know that they need engineers. They know that they need artists. They know that they need animators, right? They know what their needs are, and they're pitching their needs to their boss. That product manager is saying to their boss, "Hey, look, I need $1 million to launch this product. I'm going to split it across these 15 salaries." And maybe it's more of a program manager role. Sorry, there's another role about this called program manager, and program manager is sort of like the executive producer. Anyhow, but the product manager, they have a vision, and you help them get their vision across. So I would say try to network with product people, listen to what products are being built by companies, and then think of what talent do I have that I could have contributed into the development of that product. And, and if you see something that's like, wow, they really could have used me, or that product could have been better, with a little bit of the talent that I have, that tells you, find out who those product managers are and sell your talents to them. If it's simply a product you love, that could be a reason too. Like for me, I love scuba diving. I love the ocean. So I had no problem at all working, 72 hours straight on the blue, 3 days, and not even sleeping. I used my passion and love for the product in order to endure the pain of producing it, right? So if there are some products you happen to love, find out how they're built, find out who built them, reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, I loved your product. I want to be part of your team. Here's what I'm great at," right? And I cannot underscore the value of being proactive in your career, in your life, and especially when it comes to trying to get junior level roles. Find that cool person, ask them for the job directly. So, all right.
No, that's
Does that
great.
answer your question?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really good advice. Okay, any other questions from our students that are joining us? All right, Kim, do you have any thoughts? Just talking about some of these topics of just how to, navigate to find those people, those cool people, have those conversations, the idea of professionalism and, showing up and being proactive, being a go-getter, any of those kinds of things that you can add on.
So my favorite tip to give people when it comes to how do you build your network is to use a website called meetup.com. On there is a variety of groups you can meet in person and virtually. And better yet, volunteer to be a guest speaker for those groups. Those groups are constantly looking for guest speakers. And when you are that guest speaker, then everybody there has their eyes on you and they want to meet you. You attract attention. You get to know other people. And that's when you can have that conversation Adam is talking about, which is, oh, you do this? I'm really intrigued. Here's what I do. How can I come work for you? How can I make you money? So meetup.com is a great place. Other conferences in the, area of your industry, go to the conference, look for speaking opportunities. Don't underestimate what value you add to your community. Just because you're a junior doesn't mean you don't have new thoughts to share with people. And then I wanted to share a little bit about some of the projects I've been on. I am a product owner, so very much what Adam was saying about product management. I'm one of those people, I don't write the code, but I see all the gaps and needs for my project. So I've been on a lot of gaming type projects, even though I'm not in the gaming industry. And I'm going to name some companies I've worked with because those might be companies that you want to go look at to see what job openings they have. And the title for the job is not going to be game designer. It's going to be instructional designer or marketing or something else. But a lot of companies are trying to find how do we use games to enhance our experience. And that's because, just like Adam said, games make learning fun, so people actually want to do it, and it makes learning impactful. So the information I'm giving people in a gamified environment, it actually sticks in their brain and is far more effective than when I tell somebody 20 times, I told you yesterday to do this. It didn't stick in their brain. Games change that. Games allow them to apply what they've learned. So with that understanding, companies are using learning, gamified learning in a variety of ways. One, to train their own new hires. They want those new hires to be as effective as possible. For example, I worked at GameStop. We have seasonal work. Every Christmas season, we need to hire twice as many people. They work part-time and then they're gone. How do we make them experts in our products, especially when our products change every 3 months? So GameStop created their own gamified training program called Level Up, and it was so effective that other companies wanted to buy that from us and put their own content in it. It's not even a part of our industry. We weren't trying to sell a new product. We were just trying to solve our workforce problem. That is fascinating to me because we would have bought a third-party product had a good one been out there. The industry is thirsty for tools that make training our employees easy and interesting. So that was just stuff that was built in-house, which is why I'm saying you can look for jobs that are in a company's education team. They are going to be developing gamified learning for their internal resources. An exciting innovation I was doing for Broadcom, which is where I work now, is to explore the opportunities with a virtual escape room. So what Broadcom does, at least the division that I'm in, is we sell software to work on the mainframe. It's very business-oriented software. But we have two problems. One, how do I help my potential customers know about my 300 products and why it will improve their business? And then two, how do I help my customers use it more effectively and train them on it? Really, it's three. And then internally, how do I also help my internal people be informed? So we are constantly exploring different ways to educate all three of those: potential customers, existing customers, and internal staff. So the virtual escape room, we worked with a company called Centerline. They were sort of what you're doing, they were the creative artist side of it. And then we applied our business knowledge to create activities in our escape room that would simulate our products and create challenges for the gamer to complete. And it engaged our customers in a whole new way so they could see how our product worked without us talking to them and showing a billion PowerPoint slides. And in fact, that is actually available on the web right now. If you wanted to go check it out, it's called devopsescaperoom.broadcom.com. It was an experiment. And so that first level experiment taught us a lot. And one of the biggest things I see in the opportunities for gamified learning is the fact that we have subject matter experts. Like I said, at Broadcom, we know everything about the mainframe, but we don't know how to create an engaging gaming environment. And then we have gamers and technically train artists, but you don't understand our business model. And what we really need is we need to merge those two and partner to create a rich learning environment. And right now, it's very rudimentary. It's very complete a task, get a coin, go to the next level. Complete a task, get a coin, go to the next level. That's considered gamified, but it's not really giving that rich, impactful environment. We are going there. The industry is growing because there's money. There is money in this sector for gamified learning. Also, I went to a conference called NICWIC, which is New York Computing Women in Computing or something like that. And one of the speakers, her name is Lori Bajorek. She is the president of the National Esports Association. And I didn't remember her name, I didn't remember where she worked, but I remembered what she said because it was about gamified learning. And it was about using Minecraft in the classroom to engage students, to incentivize students, and to apply what they've learned in the classroom. And they sponsor they're a nonprofit that gets Minecraft into the classrooms and shows teachers how to use it to do all those things. So I thought that was fascinating how she took her expertise in esports and her passion for just students to learn and created a nonprofit to merge the two, and her connections with the Minecraft, what is that, Microsoft, So she took all of her assets and put it together to make something awesome for the classroom. And lastly, where I really started my software career was at a company called Study Island. So I started my career as a math teacher. I taught algebra and geometry for 3 years. I have a bachelor's in secondary education and a master's in teacher leadership. I haven't taught in 15 years, but I still use those skills. Firstly, because I went into the software industry for education. Our program was designed to help students practice for their state exams and help teachers enhance the classroom. And I admit it was very rudimentary. Students get a question, they get it right, they get to play a 10-second game. But it motivated students and it was making money. And hopefully by now they've made it far more advanced and optimized that gaming experience. But even the simplest things, there are tons of software education companies and they are leveraging gamified experiences to enhance their products. So I encourage you to look at software companies that are in the education sector, look at corporations and look at how they're trying to educate their own employees, and look at their marketing teams because their marketing teams are also looking for gamified experiences.
All right, well, you gave us, I think, a lot of things to think about and lots of different opportunities and things outside of just the standard, game studios. I think, yeah, there's so much opportunity. If students, will just kind of look outside of the normal thing, and still using their skills, still using their creativity. But again, if they can, like you're saying, think in terms of those critical thinking, how you can help problem solve, how you can find solutions for the companies or the places that you have a passion for, and kind of identify those and then try to find those key players that are in that space and reach out to them. I think, yeah, they can be very successful. So thank you guys so much for all of the advice. I really appreciate it. Students, if you came in late and you want this recording, let me know. I can send it to you, or the contact information or anything like that, for Adam and for Kim. And unless you have any other questions, students, will let them head on to their day.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.